This is probably a common scenario that happens to you when you're trying to have a Mandarin conversation. 你好, you know I can speak English, right? Don't worry about it. Yeah, it really sucks. And me being at a B1 level that has been immersing for 2 years, I can confidently tell you that the amount of people that switch from me from Mandarin to English has decreased quite significantly, especially when you just pretty much are just skill building a lot during that beginner to intermediate part and you already know a lot of basic words and such. But it can still really feel quite defeating, especially when they just figure out you're a white and then they just start spitting English at you despite you not really wanting to use English and just feels like you've just been kicked out of, let's say, the tribe or community and you're no longer really seen as like Mandarin anymore. So it really can suck. However, sometimes this actually can just be fine because here's the thing. When I'm working usually as a cashier in my job, there's going to be times where people just need to keep going and going and going. And I've met my fair share of people that can't speak good English and myself who can't speak good Mandarin. And as a result, you really can't do anything about it. And they're just going to really just tell you that, oh, okay, we just got to keep moving. It's not really a good time to speak. That is completely fine. However, there's still also many times when we're just like in a slow conversation like this, and then you are trying to talk in Mandarin and then they just suddenly start switching to you in English because they just perceive that your Mandarin level is a lot less wordy than they actually think it is. So it usually comes down to usually three things, which is either your listening, which is the most important part, your accent, which can come from your speaking, and your usage, which is more not your speaking and writing. I'm not going to cover reading because with reading, it's a lot easier to just get along with because first of all, you have all the time in the world to read things. Second of all, you can also just use a translator and stuff and just very easily trick people with it. You could also do this to some extent with writing, but sometimes translations can come out wacky and they'll probably spot you out very quickly. So this video, yeah, is pretty much about what to do if someone switches to you in English. And a lot of the things that you actually do is actually usually not while you're speaking to the person. Although I'll cover it very briefly in the next section. I want to also give you this quote where it's something along the lines of, you can only hear this quote where I found this quote online saying that, I believe you win games by what you do from your first practice until your first game. And to put this as an analogy, here, speaking and pretty much showing off your Mandarin skills, let's say right now, if you're just like talking to a camera, this is me showing off my English skills. And just to put this in perspective, it is like a game. This is where you show off. There's really not a lot of room for improvement at the time. Meanwhile, if you want to get good, you want to get stronger, you have to spend a lot of time practicing. So don't really be surprised if a lot of the things I tell you really are things about what you do later on after you're done with the game, how you evaluate it and such. But let's go first talk about what to do when you do have someone speak to you in English. Number one, just simply ask. Just simply ask, okay, can you just speak to me in Mandarin? I'm trying to learn Mandarin. Also, probably just add in a few things as well, like please speak normally. I want you to don't treat me like I'm a baby. Most of the time, most people will be happy to do so because you're learning their language and it's they're really happy and such because it's not very common for people, let's say, especially in the Anglosphere, to learn like other people's languages, blah blah blah, and yeah. However, if they don't want to switch to English, don't be an asshole about it and just constantly pester them. This is something I used to do and something I regret doing. So learn from my mistakes. And second of all, you can also ask them for crosstalk, which can also just be a subsection of the asking for help sort of thing. And crosstalk in very simple terms is just, I speak my native language, you speak your native language, and we'll converse. This is especially very good for people that want to speak early, that also don't really have a lot of experience in the language already, but you still want to connect with people. It can be a very great way in order to be more comfortable, both of you to be more comfortable, where you speak your native language, they speak their native language, and you can kind of have a nice conversation with each other. It's going to be very easy. Fourth of all, there's no more fourth one. Okay, so let's go get right into the next section, listening. Listening, in my opinion, is perhaps the most important part, whether or not someone will decide to switch to English or to just keep talking to you in Mandarin, especially what I call sudden death. Because this is a term that Smash vs. Japan used once, where the first 30 seconds of conversing to someone in a foreign language is just like a match of sudden death in Super Smash Brothers. If you don't know what sudden death is, it's pretty much a term used in video games where you and your opponent are in a tie, and then suddenly there's some sort of like special modifiers put in where it's very easy to win from both sides in order to take out your opponent, in order to break the tie and not let the game drag on for too long. Speaking is also in a conversation is exactly like that, because usually with my appearance, people will start sometimes speaking to me in full speed Mandarin, and it can be sometimes a bit more difficult and tricky to navigate these sort of things, especially when it could probably let just be, say, the environment. And it's probably just a bit too noisy. I can't hear it. I'm like, huh? And then they suddenly start speaking to me English. Yeah, you failed. Sorry. And it doesn't really help for other people that are not Asian looking. And then as a result, they also have a lot more pressure put on them with their listening skills, because if they can't listen well, as a result, they're just going to get switched to English. I know it's a hard role and it's a lot based on appearance as well. So don't feel too bad about it. It's something that it's sort of like our internal biases and such. You probably like try to so next time when you see someone trying to practice English, don't try to switch to their native language so fast, because yeah. Okay, but back to the topic about listening. This is the exact reason why listening is so important, just to really put into perspective, because if you don't listen properly, it can even be worse than having a bad accent or a mid accent, because it really just shows, in fact, like how bad your language may seem on surface, despite you probably having been immersing for thousands of hours. If you can't just like catch on to something what someone just said for like a couple, let's say seconds, then yeah, you already know what's gonna happen. So what can we do about this? Well, simply listen more. Yeah, that's all I have to say. You gotta listen a lot more. I really don't have a lot to say other than this. Okay, but let me go tell you more about how to listen better. So you have to do a lot. I can recommend you, especially if you're someone whose listening level is a bit lower than their reading level, to try out something called intensive listening, where you sort of get a piece of media and then pause it 3 times before then you check the subtitles to see what they mean. It can be a very good listening exercise, especially if you want to listen to things that are a little bit out of your reach. And in order to do that, it's best that you supplement it later on with just like a lot of free flow immersion with things that you enjoy and understand. So this is pretty much a very good feedback loop of just like getting into harder things, having things being reinforced by easier things, and then your listening will just get extremely good at certain times. Also, a bonus tip I can also give is that you can intentionally not wear headphones, and you can pretty much just try to listen of what your computer's trying to talk about, and it can be I found it can be very, let's say, good listening practice, where you really need to like double down on your concentration in order to listen or not. Just make sure to not get it to the point where it's something that's completely gibberish or ununderstandable, where it's like the environment is so distracting that you can't even concentrate on said language. Let's go talk about accent now, because accent is also another dead giveaway of whether or not people want to speak to you in English or not. Because if you have bad pronunciation to the point, even though your listening is good, it can be perhaps just people wanting you to not speak your language, and they'll switch to English immediately.
Que se mentagan informados sobre el huracán Sandy, llamando al 311 o visitando al NYC.gov. Es probable que...
Because you have to get your pronunciation to a good enough level, or be at least familiar enough to the person where they can get used to your accent eventually, and they'll just like, naturally speak to you in Mandarin. Because having a thick and heavy accent that is unfamiliar can really throw people off at first. For instance, a lot of people from, let's say, Singapore, or let's say even Scotland, for example, speak with a much more different accent compared to the standard American, British, and Australian accents that a lot of people are most familiar with. And that can probably throw people off, despite them also being native English speakers. So it could also be a lot less of a indicator of whether or not you have to switch, someone wants to switch. However, though, it's not to say that you shouldn't be improving your accent at all. And of course, just like before, this is going to be a tip I can give in order to, well, improve your accent when you're not having the time later. So let's go over it. So I recommend for accent training, first of all, is that you haven't been listening enough because you really haven't been hearing the sounds a lot. So first of all, I recommend that you go look up some sort of opinion chart or opinion guide, get used to the sounds, try to repeat after them, or like get a tone trainer if tones are currently a problem. Now, I think I currently recommend you try going into this course right here. It's a free one by Mandarin Blueprint. It pretty much goes over all the things about opinion. Very, very long video, but if you can get through it and also do lots of listening at the same time, it's probably going to get you on a very good road to understanding Mandarin accents a lot more easily, especially if you're still a beginner or someone that has been struggling with their accent right now. And then after a certain point, you could do things like shadowing and coursing, where these things will pretty much help you reinforce a lot more with a lot more faster speech. And then after that, you should have a good enough accent where a lot of people won't be turned off by it immediately. And a lot of people even actually like foreign accents if they can enjoy it, because, you know, when was the last time, let's say there's like foreign accent on a TV show where it's like, it's pretty enjoyable to understand and also like listen to because, well, it's something to understand. You just don't want to be that one person that just speaks with such a horrible accent that people just decide to not want to listen to you at all. And finally, let's go talk about usage, or sort of, yeah, usage, where usage is how you use a word, or probably perhaps even in the accent realm as well, like how you pronounce it, because there are two ways where usage can give you away. First off, it's a very subtle thing where usually you might just get like one thing incorrect, or like just have an incorrect usage of a word. That's also very common with native speakers. And this really won't affect native speakers because they know as well like certain things. Like, for example, working as a cashier myself, a lot of people do not know what this is called. But aside from that, it's like these little subtle mistakes I won't really like be super concerned about. However, there are certain also what are called loud metal steel pipe type of mistakes. For example, if you're learning a Romance language, it could be something like getting the wrong gender, and then that could really be like a big like clang in like their ears. It's like, wait, what do you say? And also with Mandarin, you can also be like, for example, you could get a tone wrong, or let's say use the wrong word at the wrong situation with such weird grammar to a point where it's like, okay, that's weird. For example, I once tried to say heal in Mandarin as 治疗, and then instead I said 恢复. And then people thought that I was trying to say 复刻, which is meant 复刻, yeah, which meant for a banner in, let's say, a gacha game to like refresh. It's a bit more complex, but they thought I was using translator, and they immediately started to speak to me in English because of my extremely weird usage of a word. And that can really be another thing. And of course, the best thing to do about this situation is also the easiest, which is get like say some Google Docs or something, or like pull out your phone and just like sort of type in like what you got wrong. You should also be doing this for also the two other things I mentioned earlier. Yeah, very easy to correct, which is, well, just type in what you got wrong, ask them what you got wrong, and then just notice it later on. Very easy. And also, not only that, because you had an embarrassing incident with it, you're going to be much more easily able to remember it. Win-win. So overall, switching to English, or someone switching to English, is not going to be the end of the road for you or them. If you really need to communicate, that's all completely fine. But just as I've shared you right here, there's also not really a lot you can do with it at the moment, aside from just simply asking them, okay, can I be able to speak with Mandarin to you? Can I practice my Mandarin with you? It's really not going to be a big of a deal, but also don't take it too personally as well. That's just really all I have to say. So that's all I have to say. And I also have a Mandarin reading course in the description if you're interested and have been someone that has been struggling with, let's say, reading Hanzi. That's where I'll teach you where to be able to learn to read Mandarin without having to, let's say, memorize thousands of characters first. It's still right now in a work in progress, so not all the videos are complete yet. So we have a road to explore. 我们的历程刚刚开始. Thank you for watching.